Welcome to A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Thursday, January 23rd. Thanks for hanging out and stopping by. We are going to talk about an absolutely preposterous trade idea that was floated today on ESPN's First Take, and why there should be no circumstance in which the Tennessee Titans even remotely consider the trade proposition that was floated today. We will get to that. We will get to Adam Schefter putting out not draft reports about the Titans, but offering draft opinions about the Titans. And those two things seem to have gotten caught up or washed up in the mix in the middle of all of this stuff that begins, the official start. I guess lying season has been underway for quite some time, but things like Schefter providing opinions when Schefter is an information person are only going to spin that cycle even more. We will do all of these things. We will get to a weekend bounce back. We'll look forward to your positions on what we are about to talk about here this evening, your opinions about what we're about to get into. And perhaps some of you will think it less preposterous than certainly I do. The idea that Dan Orlovsky said on national television today. Before we get started, I need you guys to share the broadcast around Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You know the vibes. Wherever you're spending your time with us, please share this broadcast. If you're hanging out on Twitter, retweet the show. Facebook Live, you can share not a public. You can even like it if you want. YouTube, you can do the same. There's a little thumbs up button. Hit that like button if you would be so kind. Do the same on Twitch and subscribe to either channel. If you are not subscribed to us there, we would greatly appreciate it. And as you do that, more of you guys will trickle in here. We'll talk about the Titans, and we will see what your position is on the trade proposition that was floated today on ESPN. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Zen Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising. I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you by TrueMath Fitness in the Gulch. Go to TrueMathFitness.com. I'll be at TrueMath Fitness tomorrow on Friday at 7 a.m. You can get your personal training in. You can get your group fitness classes. No workout ever recycled or repeated at TrueMathFitness.com. By Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at TwoRiversFord.com for more information. By Zen Sports, where you can wager on all your favorite major sports. ZenSports.com with promo code ATOZTN is how you get involved. And, of course, Bart Durham Injury Law. Blair Durham and the Bart Durham team will get you the money that you deserve, because you deserve to be paid. The results you deserve are only available at BartDurham.com today. So there's a lot of stuff that's said at this time of year. There's a lot of time that needs to be taken up. We're down to 2 football games left in this season. College football is over with the national champion crowned this past Monday. We have conference championships in the NFL this weekend. Then we'll have a week for Shrine Bowl this weekend, Senior Bowl next weekend before the Super Bowl, and then football is done. Well, football games are done. We know that football is not done because the draft evaluation process is underway. People have been hired. People have been fired. I guess people have been fired, and then people have been hired, or in the case of the Jags, people have been fired, and now jobs are being reconsidered and all manner of other things. I don't know how many of you, we're not going to cover it here on primetime, but the Liam Cohen shit with the Jags and the Buccaneers and all these different things. There are quite a bit. 3 football games. Bert corrects me. That is correct. We have 3 football games left, 2 weekends of football games left, 2 conference championship games, 1 Super Bowl. I'm bad at math. I apologize. But either way, our time with the actual games is running out. And then it becomes about the number 1 overall draft pick. It becomes about the Tennessee Titans on the clock. Or if they decide to trade it, still, they control a good bit of leverage and discourse around this draft and intrigue around this draft, because they're the first ones to go. And everything starting after the Super Bowl until the second to last weekend in April will be about what the Tennessee Titans are going to do. Trade, pick, quarterback, pass rusher, Travis Hunter, all these different kinds of conversations, with so much time in between before we get to the actual decision that will be made on that Thursday night in April. Of course, we have free agency and all manner of other things. The point is, personnel acquisition is going to be at the forefront, and there's going to be a lot of spinning around the draft cycle specifically, and people offering opinions as to what they think the team at the top of the draft should do. And certainly that started well before today, but it kind of, started to get a bit ridiculous today with ESPN and Dan Orlovsky on First Take. Now, I like Dan. I respect Dan. I've enjoyed every opportunity that we've had to talk to Dan Orlovsky, on whether it be on the radio show or, seeing him before the Titans typically play the B team Monday Night Football game as they did this year. He's done both of those Titans-Miami games, and you catch up with Dan on the sidelines, you get his opinion on things. He's a very, very bright, intelligent guy, but this was a batshit crazy opinion that he offered today on television. And sometimes those things happen. I say batshit crazy stuff all the time, but this, obviously, the difference between the primetime show and First Take is a megaphone for this kind of stuff, and it did spin up a certain level of conversation, which it is intended to do, earlier today. So we'll get to Dan Orlovsky and his trade proposal for the Titans here in just a second. The question that I'm going to ask you is this in the comments section: fair or foul? If you would like to submit your opinion there. In fact, Bert, I think we sent the wrong email. Agree or disagree? Dan Orlovsky's trade proposal for the Tennessee Titans. Agree or disagree? Give me your submission. You can tell me why. Maybe you haven't heard what Dan Orlovsky's opinion is just yet, and you can have the opportunity to watch this clip here in just a second. But agree or disagree with Dan Orlovsky's trade proposal that he offered today on First Take. Before we hear from Orlovsky, I'll remind you that Two Rivers Ford is the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. They make the car buying process fast, easy, and more fun. Go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online, like I mentioned, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. So Dan Orlovsky offered a trade option for the Titans with the number 1 overall pick, and that trade option involved a divisional opponent.
The solution.
Okay.
If I were the Titans, I would call the Jacksonville Jaguars and try to trade for Trevor Lawrence. And if I was Trevor Lawrence, I would want the absolute heck out of Jacksonville.
I don't have no problem with that.
I would want the absolute heck out of the mess that is the
my
Jacksonville
challenge
Jaguars
to you, though,
right
Dan, here's my problem with that, Dan. Be reasonable. I'm going to trade my quarterback within the division.
If you're Jacksonville, first of all, if I'm Trevor Lawrence, I am spurring this. Like, if I want out of Jacksonville. And if you're Tennessee, realistically, we're sitting here and we're trying to get all this rebuild, and I would be someone to tell you, I think Tennessee's got a decent football roster, better than the first pick worthy type roster. Shador, and I haven't studied Shador and Cam well enough to make a definitive statement on where exactly I think they might be or whatnot. And Travis Hunter special, you don't matter at the conference unless you get a quarterback. As special as Travis Hunter is,
you don't matter in the sport. You don't matter in the sport.
So, and you got to rebuild Trevor Lawrence's mindset and his psyche and his confidence. But if I'm Tennessee and I'm looking at it all, I'm calling Jacksonville and saying, okay, because you don't know what's going on in Jacksonville. It's a mess right now.
Agreed. It is a mess. That's Dan Orlovsky on ESPN's First Take today, offering a trade that he would propose between the Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars, two teams that exist in the AFC South, and trading straight up the number 1 overall pick for former number 1 overall pick, Trevor Lawrence. Now, it's preposterous. I guess I shouldn't say it will never happen, because there's always a percentage chance that it could happen. But there is a very, very minute chance that anything like this would even be considered by both sides. They're divisional rivals. There is no way that one divisional rival would trade the quarterback that they just paid $55 million a year on a long-term contract to the other divisional rival if they actually believe in that quarterback. The only place that I would agree with Dan is that Trevor Lawrence probably wants out of Jacksonville, even though today it seems like Liam Cohen is about to become their next head coach, and that would probably put Trevor Lawrence in the best possible position to succeed that he's had, given that his first coach was Urban Meyer. Then things with Doug Peterson did not go to plan. The Trent Baalke thing has been an abject disaster. The Jags look like the dumbest franchise in professional football right now. It appears to spiral more and more as each day passes. Now, perhaps they have gotten the situation at least handled to some extent with the Liam Cohen hire, because now that they've got Baalke out, that's a more attractive job for prospective candidates. And perhaps that is something that they can do. And I will say that Trevor Lawrence, even though Trevor Lawrence is not, he's not been good, is about as kindly as I can say or describe the Trevor Lawrence experience. On aggregate, he has not lived up, certainly not to the contract that they gave him this past offseason, but he is pretty underwhelming as a player. Now, quarterback wins and losses are not the best way to judge a quarterback, but as a starting quarterback, Jacksonville is 22-38 with one playoff appearance with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence now going into, his fifth NFL season, where he has already been paid a mega contract. And in fact, I can get you the details of Trevor Lawrence and his contract, courtesy of SpotTrack, here in just a second. It is a wild proposal for a variety of different reasons. It is the best quarterback option that they could get with the number one overall pick right now, because neither Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders are at least as good as prospects as Trevor Lawrence was. Whether Jacksonville has ruined him or not en route to him becoming a competent NFL player, which he is below 500 as an NFL quarterback, even though he is making mega cash and he does not have an out on this contract. It's a 5-year, $275 million deal. And the cap hit next year is not bad. It's only 17 mil before it starts to balloon up. In 26, it's 24 million. In 27, it's 35 million. In 28, it's 47 before the potential out that allows them to eat zero dead cap. His number, because technically he'd be under contract until 2030 right now, his number balloons up from 47 in 2028 to 78.5 and then 74.8 in the following years. This is the extension that Trevor Lawrence was given, and it's really tough to wrap your head around the idea of taking on that kind of potential salary for the number one overall pick, when this is a team that has just talked about their interest in drafting, developing, and retaining. Agree or disagree, Dan Orlovsky's trade proposal, I would staunchly disagree with the percentage chance that it would ever happen. And if ever I did think it was a possibility, it certainly would not be under this administration, where Mike Borgonzi talked yesterday and Chad Brinker talked yesterday about the idea of important to be more selective with the way that they use their draft capital, with the way that they use their salary cap space. They have the number one overall pick in the NFL right now. They have about $50 million in available cap space, which is not the most, but it's a sizable chunk heading into the offseason. They are probably going to find a way, or at least should be actively trying to find a way to trade out of that number one overall pick and address as many needs on this roster as they can, as their stated plan of having 30 picks in the next 3 years, with 12 of those picks being in the top 100. It is impossible to do that without trading this number one overall draft pick. I don't think it's realistic. Jonathan Caverly says this isn't a question, Buck. We all know the answer is to disagree. Yeah, as far as I can tell, I don't think I've seen another one of you agree at this point in time. MB says, Buck, you have to realize that Orlovsky loves to listen to himself with his garbage takes. He's trying to get a rise. I think MB means a raise. Well, no, I don't realize that. I know Dan to be a very intelligent football mind. I'm not saying that Dan Orlovsky, when it comes to the personnel acquisition of things, like Dan is a very intelligent football mind. And Dan has talked at great length and broken down film and shown you things using the VR technology that ESPN gives him on NFL Live, on game broadcasts. I think Dan does a really good job. But this is a front office transaction, and you're talking to a former player, which doesn't mean that former players can't lend their own experience to the discussion on front office transactions, but I would say that this is not Dan's specific area of expertise, though he is viewed as a football mind whose opinion people value. It's just that I don't value this particular opinion, and I don't think that this is anything that is feasible based on what we know about the two teams and specifically the front office structure that the Titans just brought in. I think he might believe. I mean, I don't have any reason to think that he doesn't believe this. I just think that it's a bit nonsensical, even if he does. I say nonsensical things that I believe all the time. And you guys, give me a bunch of shit about it sometimes. Oh, you're just trying to be controversial or have a hot thing. No, I believe everything that I say. Now, whether I'm out of my depth or not is a completely fair discussion to have. But I think Dan is just a bit out of his depth at this point on this specific subject matter, even though I value Dan's opinions on football, of course. Chosen says, Buck, do you see the Jags trading for Levis as a backup if Liam takes the job? Sure, that could go one of two ways. If I was Will Levis's agent, I would be actively advocating to be traded to Jacksonville. If I was Liam Cohen, I might look around and be like, no, I think I got the best out of that player as humanly possible. And as a backup, that's one thing, because Jacksonville's backup situation, Mac Jones is on an expiring contract. He'll be a free agent. They could bring him back. They could not, depending on how Liam Cohen views Mac Jones. He's not, by the way, officially the Jags coach yet, which is why we preface all of this with the idea that it seems like it's trending in that direction, but it also seemed like it was trending in the direction of him being the Bucs offensive coordinator as of less than 24 hours ago. So all that to say, for the Levis proposition there, if I'm Liam Cohen, I might look around and be like, I have a reputation. I have a good reputation, in part because I maxed out Will Levis as a college football player. I don't know that I want to necessarily gamble on that in the pros. Or he could think a lot of Levis, more than the current Titans administration thinks of Levis, and he could try and trade for them because he apparently is going to get to pick his general manager in this now that Trent Baalke is out. So I would say that's a situation to monitor at this point in time. But the idea of the Trevor Lawrence Titans trade, no, that's just nonsensical at this point. All right, speaking of nonsensical stuff, the draft discourse will be exhausting, especially with the Titans sitting at the top, especially when you have aggregators who are quick to jump on things that they might spin as reporting when actually they're just opinion-based, like when an information person, like Adam Schefter, famously an NFL information person, offers an opinion on a Boston radio show about what he thinks the Titans could do with the number one overall pick, not what he's reporting that the Titans will do with the number one overall pick. And I think that got a bit swept up yesterday. We'll get to that here in just a second, right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. GaryAshton.com. Get your dream address without the stress. Get the intel edge you need to succeed, courtesy of the official real estate agent of the Nashville Predators. That's GaryAshton.com. So, with everything going on with the number one overall pick, we understand that the quarterback class, it sounds like, and again, we're early in this. Pro days haven't happened. The combine hasn't happened. Free agency hasn't happened, which of course could impact the draft and the quarterback draft. I would expect the Titans to be involved in quarterback free agency, even if the options don't look overwhelmingly great right now. Mason Rudolph's on an expiring deal. They have no choice but to be involved, even if it's just to bring Mason back. And we'll see what Mike Borgonzi and his staff and the Titans front office ultimately opt to do. So there will be free agents addressed, and there will be quarterback free agents addressed by this specific team in the upcoming free agency cycle, whether or not they draft a quarterback. Now, as we sit here today, prior to all of the combine and pro days and interviews and medicals going down, it seems like most people are trending towards only Cam Ward having a first-round grade necessarily. Whether Shedeur gets drafted in the first round or not remains to be seen. But as a prospect, neither of them are at the top of the prospect lists that are out there by talent evaluators right now. Now, that may be different for some teams. So one team may, look at this as a Bo Nix type situation. Nobody has Bo Nix going in the first round. All of a sudden, he's the 12th overall pick in the NFL draft. And Sean Payton looks like he was right about that based on the fit with the coach and the organization. So that could always happen specific to the quarterbacks. We don't have actually insights and information on how these teams have these players graded out. We go off prognostications, we go off projections. And right now, most people would not project Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders as top 5 prospects, even though they might go as top 5 picks in this particular situation. And there's some reason to believe that, all things being equal, Shedeur, if a team is not desperate enough for a quarterback, that Shedeur could end up being a Will Levis type of situation where he falls to the second round. Now, maybe the top of the second round, and maybe the bottom of the first round, but that would still be a more steep drop than plenty of teams with quarterback needs might otherwise indicate that they are willing to take. Because there are positions of need across the board. Quarterback is always a position of need for any number of teams in the league. How many teams this year need a quarterback? You're talking about potentially the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. We know the Titans situation. We know the Browns situation. The Giants, the Raiders, all teams at bare minimum. The Saints probably in all likelihood. Now, who's going to come up and try and get a quarterback? Always Bears worth monitoring, and all of these things are just projections, are just guesses until we actually see who goes first, whether the Titans trade out of first, and how that impacts the quarterback draft versus the rest of the draft, because they're basically two different entities. So Adam Schefter offered an opinion yesterday on WEEI in Boston, and specific to the Titans and their potential trajectory. Again, this is an opinion, not a report, so take that for what it's worth.
So, Adam, last one here. Earlier today, this is sort of more looking forward into the draft. You tweeted out around 11:30 today, Titans President of Football Operations, Chad Brinker, at today's press conference to introduce GM Mike Borgonzi. We won't pass on a generational talent with the first pick in the NFL draft. If you had to guess, not holding your feet to the fire per se, but if you had to guess, who do you think that generational talent might be, or do you have any intimations as to which way the Titans would be going?
The defensive lineman from Penn State or the wide receiver cornerback from Colorado. That quote told me that they are not locked in to take a quarterback at 1. That is not what New England wanted to hear. That quote today.
No, it was not, sir.
Certainly not.
That's unfortunate, Adam, but we end on a low note, so a great player is not going to drop to the Patriots at 4. Appreciate you.
1, I don't think 3 radio hosts have ever looked more like Boston sports radio than those 3 gentlemen there, but that's courtesy of WEEI in Boston. Adam Schefter offering an opinion. Now, there's a couple of things to note there. Chad Brinker did say that if they felt there was a generational talent at number 1, that they would not pass that player over. A couple of things on that. I believe him. I really hate when anybody, and I really hate hearing it from a team, if I'm being honest with you. I really hate the idea that personnel people are comfortable about talking about these players as generational type talents. Generational type talents are exactly that. They come around once, maybe twice in a generation. Bert, is Lamar Jackson a generational talent?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Is Josh Allen?
Yeah, probably.
Is Joe Burrow?
No.
And of course, Patrick Mahomes is. I don't know that you could describe any quarterback in the NFC as a generational talent. There are players who, so we've already kind of maxed out on this generation's generational talent, right? Those are the kind of players that we're talking about. And even they weren't generational prospects. You know who was? Trevor Lawrence. And obviously we've seen how this has gone. That was the language that was used around him. There can be players who are excellent at college football without being generational. There can be players who are very, very good as prospects, but when they get to the NFL, they are not generational. It's loaded language. Loaded language. It is, MB says, it's generational coming out of college, which I think is silly. That's my point. They may be that kind of a player in college, though I think even that is overused because I don't think there's as many players that fit that bill as we try to put that label on. There's not one every year, right? Travis Hunter is a once in a generation type of college football player because we've never seen a player play 130 snaps in college football playing two different positions. But he's not a generational prospect at either wide receiver or corner. There have been better wide receivers before Travis Hunter. There have been better corners than Travis Hunter in the last couple of years. That's not accurate. That's not fair, I think, to the players. I think if you put those labels on them, then you are setting them up for failure in terms of level of expectation. And this fan base is not one that should be oversold on anything after this organization oversold you on how competent or how good of a football team they would actually be in 2024, only to fall flat on their faces and to be literally the opposite of meaningfully competitive. They were the worst team in football last year. So I don't like the use of the word generational when it comes to the draft conversation. Let's start there. The second part of that is I agree with Schefter because it's an opinion. It's not reporting. These quarterbacks are not viewed in that light. Whether or not they end up being first-round picks, they may go on to be good NFL players. They may go on to be great NFL players. We have no idea what these guys are going to end up being because we have no idea where they're going to land and whether the places that they're going to land are going to have good enough infrastructure to support them. If the Tennessee Titans were to select one of these quarterbacks number one overall, I would assume that that player is going to fail. Because if they spent the number one overall draft pick just straight up without getting trade options or without getting draft compensation in a potential trade for a weak what is considered to be a weaker quarterback draft, then I would assume that they don't have the necessary infrastructure, even though they do have more picks. They have 8 total picks, including that number one overall draft pick. But 8 total picks, especially without a third rounder in 2025, is not enough to adequately support one of these type of quarterbacks. Now, maybe you get the veteran in there and you don't have to support a veteran as much as you might one of these rookie players. But if a player like that comes in here with the number one overall pick, then there's going to be a certain expectation from ownership that player is going to play because they want to sell tickets. They want to give fans a reason to show up, and there's no reason to show up for a Titans game as of late. And 2, there is going to be some expectation from fans that if you spent the number one overall pick on that player, then you truly believe in that player, and they were going to want to see him right away. I think that is the worst possible scenario. I honestly think there's nothing wrong. I don't have any issue with the Titans potentially taking a quarterback in the first round, but I think it's a terrible mistake to take one first overall. If they're going to go in that direction, I think this thing is going to be ill-fated from the start. Again, if they believe in the player enough to take him number one overall, they are risking their professional lives and reputations on that because they damn sure better be right. And this is not the quarterback draft to necessarily gamble with that kind of proposition. I really think that the Titans staying at number one overall and taking the quarterback there would be the worst possible situation that could present itself out of all of this. Even if it is a quarterback and even if it provides you that excitement is not enough to help this quarterback out. They need wide receivers for this quarterback. They need offensive linemen for this quarterback. They need tight ends for this quarterback because I don't know what the hell the Titans tight end group really is at this point in time, other than that a rookie quarterback will need a significantly better security blanket. And, I don't know if Will Levis is going to be here. I don't know if Will Levis is going to be somewhere else by the time that we get to roster cuts. Let's say I would probably expect him to be here in training camp, but we'll see. We'll find out. The Liam Cohen factor is interesting in this, but again, that requires a divisional trade between 2 divisional foes, and I don't think that the Titans are going to get decent enough compensation to make it worth moving Levis to Jacksonville. They got a 7th round pick back for Malik Willis, and that ended up being a bad deal in their favor. The Titans ended up getting the worst part of that deal because Malik Willis played and won games for the Green Bay Packers this year, and the Titans basically gave him away for that 7th round pick that, maybe they end up using to try and package and trade up. But again, it's a 7th round pick. That's not leverage. So Corey says it's crazy people are saying don't take the quarterback at number 1 overall. No other franchise says this when they have the number 1 overall pick. I mean, the Chiefs did it. The Chiefs did it not that long ago. The Chiefs drafted Eric Fisher, number 1 overall with clear and obvious quarterback needs. That happened. Mike Borgonzi was a part of that. That's a very real thing. It depends on the draft. You can't just there's no Corey, I get what you're saying. And more often than not, you would be right. This draft class is closer to 2022 with Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett and Desmond Ridder than it is to last year's. And that's just based on the prospects that they are. They could end up being good professional players. The hit rate for these guys is so low. And you have needs everywhere at this point in time. You have to consider all options on the table and whether or not that option that you just specifically mentioned is worth the risk. If you were going to gamble your professional reputations on a quarterback class, I personally don't think it would be this one, but I don't know what their draft board looks like. They don't even know what their draft board looks like entirely yet because they've just gotten started. I am fascinated to see what happens here because I think it's going to define, whatever happens is going to define their future as an organization. If they don't take the quarterback, I think they're trying to make a more long-term play. If they do take a quarterback, they're telling you that they think that if they take the quarterback number 1 of 1, right? If they take the quarterback 1 of 1, then the expectation would be that that player is going to play. And I would have many, many other questions about this. But based on what we know Borgonzi's track record to be, he was a part of an incredibly slow build from 4 wins, or rather from 2 wins in 2008 to 4 wins in 2009 to what the Chiefs are today. And he had Andy Reid, and he had Brett Veach, and he had John Dorsey and Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes and Alex Smith, all a part of that. It took every bit of those 16 years that he was in Kansas City to get it to the thing that they're at now. But there's no way that they can actually accomplish what they've said that they want to accomplish, which is 30 picks in the next 3 drafts and 12 in the top 100. There's no chance that they can get close to that without moving this number 1 overall pick. I don't know who's going to want to come up. I don't know if a team is going to want to come up. The Titans had a situation like this. I've talked about this a million times over. In 2017, they had the number 5 overall pick. The Titans drafted Corey Davis with the number 5 overall pick. That player better be Julio Jones for you to take him there. They didn't have a choice. They tried to trade out of 5. Nobody wanted to come up to 5. And they had obvious needs at wide receiver. They took Corey Davis that year. They took Taywan Taylor in the 3rd round pick. Neither of those players worked out for the long term. And you understand why. Corey Davis was not Julio Jones. Corey Davis was better than a lot of options you've had in the last 3 years, basically, save DeAndre Hopkins. But Corey Davis wasn't worthy of the number 5 overall pick, but the Titans had no choice because they couldn't get out and they had a need. So we will see how this goes and we will see what comes of it. But, and people can be wrong about these quarterbacks. Everybody could be wrong about these quarterbacks. That's the thing. This is not a perfect science. This is far from it. It's the most imperfect, impossible to predict. I'm going to sneeze. Science that is out there regarding the evaluation of talent in the NFL at all, much less the quarterback position. People get it wrong on the quarterbacks all the time. But the best way to prevent yourself from getting it wrong on the quarterbacks is to put the quarterbacks in the best possible position to succeed. And if you drafted a quarterback number 1 overall on this particular roster, that quarterback would not have the best possible conditions to succeed. It's Caleb Williams. It's Trevor Lawrence. And again, I defer to draft people who are draft experts on these things. Neither of these players coming out of college are Trevor Lawrence or Jaden Daniels. And that's kind of the thing that they're up against right now. It's a tough year to be this bad. It doesn't mean that you can't make something out of it. And I think that the best possible situation here is to get as many picks as possible, to get as many different players as possible across as many different positions as you can to try and regenerate this roster so that when you do get the quarterback, you put that quarterback in position to actually help you rather than to be just running for his life back there at this point. All right. So from all of that to the weekend bounce back, who needs to bounce back the most in sports this weekend? Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. In the comment section, if you want to dive in, let me know who you think needs to bounce back. We'll talk about it together right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by Zen Sports. Promo code ATOZTN gets you in on all the action. Your $100 no danger first wager available to you when you use that promo code. Terms and conditions do apply. Gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789 at Zen Sports. And, of course, also brought to you by True Math Fitness in the Gulch. Your first workout is free as a Middle Tennessee resident. No workout ever recycled. No workout ever repeated. I'll be there with True Math tomorrow morning at 7:15 a.m. for some personal training. TrueMathFitness.com. Your first workout is free. All right. Who needs to bounce back most in sports this weekend? Austin Hall says Amy Adams-Strunk. She wasn't at the press conference. It's first photo op she's missed when hiring a coach or a general manager. She wasn't at Mike Mularkey's press conference with John Robinson. So I guess that was John Robinson's press conference with Mike Mularkey. Steve Underwood, the team president at the time, did that. So it's the first time she's missed something like this since becoming the controlling owner. She was there for Vrabel's, there for Carthon's, there for Callahan's, and missed this one. She has empowered Burke Nihill, the team president, to speak on her behalf. So Burke Nihill was in the picture instead of Amy Adams-Strunk with Brinker, Borgonzi, and Callahan. Whether or not you think she needs to be more involved, I think some NFL teams would tell you they're happy to have, an owner who delegates and hires competent people who she thinks are competent to run her organization, rather than her be involved in the decision-making process without the necessary experience or expertise to do it. Some people would prefer that. I think that there is some level of accountability that's deserved for fans. She doesn't make public comments that are not scripted. She doesn't take questions the way that a lot of ownership structures do. She's here on game days, but pretty few and far between with that. I know that she's been working on her property in outside of Nashville in town for quite some time at this point, and maybe at that point she'll be more present with the organization. But I don't know if that's something that you want. I don't know what you want out of her, because I think a lot of people. So I get what you're saying. I get where you're coming from, but at the end of the day, I do think there's something to, well, do you really want her that involved? Because, you've got alternatives like Jerry Jones and Woody Johnson, or would you rather just have her in the background, hiring people to make these decisions, people that are actually more qualified to make these decisions than her? I get what you're saying, though. JD says D-Hop needs a bounce back. Why does D-Hop need a bounce back? He's getting ready to be in an AFC championship game. I think D-Hop's chilling at this point in time. McVay needs to bounce back after losing Stretch. Yes, John Stryker, famously, a.k.a. Stretch, who went to work for Sean McVay and the Rams, who is a very, very good situational assistant. I think a lot of the game management stuff, the in-game decision-making stuff that Vrabel gets credit for, Vrabel gets exclusive credit for, and that shouldn't be, because Stretch has always been an important part of that process, and I think Stretch helped make Mike look that way. Not that Vrabel's not intelligent and isn't on the he was on the competition committee, and I think he knows the rule book as well as the refs do at any given point. Stretch is a big part of that situational decision-making. Now that Vrabel's back in the league as a head coach, Stretch is heading to New England, and I think McVay not necessarily pleased about that, because Stretch is really good at what he does. I know Titans fans didn't necessarily know who he was or know what he looks like or anything like that, but he is he's really, really good at what he does. Corey says he's still in a Mike Keith bunk, so he needs to bounce back at this point in time. Austin Hall says, so do we still get a fourth rounder if the Chiefs get to the Super Bowl for D-Hop? No, you do not, because he did not play anywhere close to the 60% of the snaps that he is required to play. Also, they need to make the Super Bowl, so that's a two-pronged approach, and why would they play him 60% of the snaps to give up a fourth when they could just manage his snaps as they did? I think I don't have the average off the top of my head, but the last time I looked, it was heading into week 18, I want to say. And I don't know if he played. He probably didn't play in week 18, did he? They didn't play any of their starters. I would be surprised if Diop played hardly at all. But yeah, no, they're not getting a fourth round pick for him at this point in time. So with all of that to 51% is what Hop ended up at. That's the math the last time I looked at his snap count, and that was heading into week 18. Week 18, of course, when they did not play. So yeah, over 50%, but you needed 60. You needed 60 plus the Super Bowl appearance, and there's no guarantee that the Chiefs get by Josh Allen, even though Josh Allen and the Bills have to go to Arrowhead this time around. Ann says, he's like 9 feet tall. How can you not know what he looks like? Yeah, I know, Ann, but I assume that you've been around more than, I mean, if Rand Carthon helped you propose to your fiance, I'm assuming that you've been around the facility more than the average person at that point. And so that you would probably know what John Stryker looks like. I'm assuming the vast majority of people have no idea what Stretch looks like, because it's not like he was on the sideline. He's in the booth, or at least he was when Vrabel was here. I don't know if he was on field or in the box with McVay and the Rams. So anyway, no fourth round pick for the DeAndre Hopkins trade at this point in time. But I don't know why D-Hop needs a bounce back. He's in pretty good position. ESPN needs a bit of a bounce back because Cam Newton very comfortable calling them out on their own platforms.
I'm going to go with the unpopular pick, but I want everybody to keep this same energy in other commodities, in politics, in entertainment, in sports, no matter what it is. And we haven't been holding people to the same fire. So, Mark Andrews, it's okay, bro. You ain't got to talk to nobody, because in other networks, there's lawsuits that's been out. We ain't heard nobody say nothing about that. Now, we got other things that's coming up. When there's a Fox report that comes out and we haven't heard anybody speak about anything or make any type of public announcement, nobody has held Fox to that same thing. So why are we talking about making a big fuss about Mark Andrews if you're not going to keep that same energy across the board? That's what I'm saying.
But he's
saying in all different industries, people don't have to.
I just didn't understand what he was saying. That's all. I didn't know.
He's just saying in all different industries, people don't have to be held accountable and go in front of a mic right away. So
and listen, I fully, Mark's going to talk at some.
The way that Stephen A. Smith sat up in his chair and said, "What do you mean?" I don't know if he actually didn't understand that Cam Newton was talking about Fox, or if he thought he was making a different kind of a reference there. But yeah, he's referring to the Joy Taylor, Emmanuel Acho Fox Sports story, the details of which are very TMZ, and that Fox has just kind of rolled through. I mean, Joy Taylor and Emmanuel Acho are still on television at this point in time. I don't know what became of the Fox executive that that was also caught up in the. I mean, is it a love triangle? Is that technically what it is? It's not really a love triangle, right? It's just kind of sleeping around the office to an extent, or multiple people in the office sleeping with a person allegedly in a lawsuit that has been alleged against Fox. Skip Bayless also alleged, all of this alleged, to have offered, I think it was $1.5 million for a hairdresser. The hairdressers who filed the lawsuit, and it are many allegations of Joy Taylor and Emmanuel Acho and this Fox Sports executive and Skip Bayless and inter-office relations and a lot of mess, big mess.
I would have done his hair for half of that.
I really hate this new Burt character that just pops in and pops out of this, makes these quick comments and then scurries back to the shadows. I don't know if I like this character or not. But yeah, the Fox thing is messy, and nobody's really pressed, other than like people that cover media, right? Like awful announcing. And I think there's been pieces on the like the New York Post about it, but not. It's not like ESPN is demanding that Fox make some level of announcement, and I think that's kind of what Cam Newton is hinting at. But yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess over there. It would seem it's a mess for some people. If nobody's doing better than Colin Cowherd, who was described as a very polite and kind gentleman. Win for the good guy? ? Colin Cowherd. How about that? Anyway, that's going to do it for us tonight here on the Primetime Program radio show tomorrow. Coach Mack will be there. We'll look forward to that. We'll preview the conference championship weekend with Greg Cosell. The install, by the way, is available to you if you need to get ready for conference championship weekend. See, now that's not fair because I've got my vacuum cleaner to my right here, and now you've exposed my set. What is this picture that you've made? Is that Brock Lesnar's body? Is that what that's supposed to be? Oh, somebody photoshopped it together. Okay. Very good. Ann says, yes, that's mine. All right. Bert working a variety of different things into the show. Yes, I was vacuuming before this. You'll excuse that being stop it. Oh my God. End the show, Bert. Radio show tomorrow, 10 a.m. We'll see you guys there. Enough of this already.